Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the webinar, Publishing Your Research in American Educational Research Journal, AERJ, a guide for international scholar. We are so thrilled to have you join us. As of this morning, 1,530 scholars from 105 countries are joining us. And so we are very excited and thank you for being here. So yeah, I would like to get started. My name is Motoko Akiba. I'm serving as the editor-in-chief of American Educational Research Journal, AERJ, and I will be serving as the moderator. So we can get started with the PowerPoint presentation. All right, next slide, please. All right, I would like to first quickly introduce the panelists. First, I will share the AERJ's vision and editorial process. And our managing editor, Mr. Xiaonan Jian, who is a PhD student at Florida State University, will share the AERJ's manuscript requirement. And after that, Dr. Tom Lushai, the co-editor of AERJ, will talk about the AERJ scope, how to avoid a desk rejects decision. And we have Dr. Dario Maldonado, our associate editor, joining us from Colombia. He's going to tell us about how to situate your research in a global context. And we have Dr. Ingrid Goglin, associate editor, and she is joining us from Germany, and she will share her advice around how demystifying AERJ's publication process. Okay, well, I'd like to start with sharing the AERJ vision. So as the flagship journal of AERA, we publish the highest quality education research, empirical, theoretical, and methodological, that can inform policy, leadership, teaching, and learning, reflecting a wide range of perspectives, topics, contexts, and methods, including interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary work. So basically, we publish any research in any context, any countries around the globe, as long as it is the highest quality education research. And our panelists will share more detail about that later on. So we also, as a new editorial team of AERJ, we have our vision. First, we would like to increase the articles on pressing diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI issues from global perspective. And second, we would like to publish more articles that focus on the experiences and voices of marginalized individuals and communities by applying diverse research methodologies. So that is beyond those traditional methodologies that are commonly known, but we welcome those articles that use unique or new research methodologies. And finally, we would like to promote global intercultural dialogues based on the cutting-edge DI and CIE, the comparative international education research that we publish in AERJ. Okay, so I'd like to introduce the editorial structures. So all the manuscripts are first reviewed by the editor-in-chief. So basically, I review about 15 to 20 manuscripts that comes in every week and make a decision whether each manuscript is a desk reject or needs to be sent out for external review. And we have 5 co-editors who will handle all those manuscripts that goes out to the reviewer. And the co-editor, each co-editors will assign the manuscript to associate editors who then oversees the entire review process, selecting the three highly qualified reviewers who are the expert of the specific topic of the manuscript. And once the associate editor gather three high quality review, then they will make tentative decisions on the manuscript and draft the decision letter, which will be then reviewed and by the co-editors who again has expertise in that particular area of the manuscript. And finally, I will approve as before the letter goes to the authors. So you can see that this each manuscript goes through the multiple levels of revisions and refinement and making sure that we provide the highest quality review to each manuscript so that it will be helpful for the authors. Okay, so this slide lists our editorial teams. So we have, 5 co-editors, as I mentioned, and we have 20 associate editors, and we have a total of 76 editorial board members who serve also as reviewers more frequently than the regular reviewers, but also who provide advice and guidance to the editorial team by attending the editorial board meetings at American Educational Research Association annual meetings. And so I highlighted those editors who have comparative international education expertise. So 9 of us have that expertise. So either we have a degree or we have extensively published our research in the field of comparative international education. So we have the team who can understand, who appreciate, and who can guide our author toward publication. And collectively, we have very diverse research expertise and backgrounds, various methodologies. We are very diverse in terms of ethnic, racial backgrounds. We are coming from 10 different countries, 10 plus, different countries of origins. We collectively speak more than 10 different languages. Okay, so I would like to share several statistics that we have based on the data in 2024. So our impact factor is 3.5. And so we receive a total of 900 manuscripts in 2024. And 71% of all of these manuscripts were desk rejected. About 47% for being out of scope, and 24% for low quality. So the remaining 29% were sent out for external review because they met those minimum standards for publication. And among those, 12% receive the reject decision after external review, 5% receive reject and resubmit decision, which is basically the same as revise and resubmit. So they are encouraged to address the reviewer's comment and resubmit an improved version of their manuscript to AERJ. And 5% receive the decision of accept. Remaining 7%, they are still in the process, so we haven't made the decisions. And there are 1%, very small number of articles the author decided to withdraw. Okay, so our review timeline is 4 months. And most of the manuscripts will go through 2 or 3 rounds of revision in AERJ. So we will never accept a manuscript right away for a reason that no manuscript is perfect. And, so our reviewer will make a extensive list of revisions regarding how the author can improve their manuscript. So as a result, it is common for the author to go through 2 to 3 rounds of revisions before their manuscript is accepted. And of course, in each round of revision, we do our best to return the revised manuscript to the same reviewer who reviewed the original manuscript. So the author will receive consistent feedback from the reviewers. And so the submission to publication timeline is 18 to 24 months, 1.5 years to 2 years. So it is a long process, but considering that you will have to go through 2 to 3 rounds of revisions and each review timeline is 4 months, it will end up taking that long time. So there's no cost to publish an article in AERJ, and the AERJ is not an open access journal, but we partner with United Nations Research for Life, EIFL, Electronic Information for Library, and over 7,000 libraries around the globe can access AERJ free or at highly discounted rate. Okay, so I would like to now share the article statistics. So what we did here was that we downloaded all the manuscripts published in AERJ from 2013 to 2023, so over the time span of 11 years, and categorized them in terms of disciplinary fields and methodology. So here you can see that in terms of disciplinary fields, we publish in all the different fields within the education. So education policy, curriculum instruction, higher education, teacher education, leadership, psychology, and so on. So the other categories may include the social context, informal education, or philosophy of education, history of education, and so on. So in terms of methodology, 54% are quantitative articles and 34% are qualitative, and 7% use mixed methods. The other remaining 5% were either conceptual studies or historical legal methods that were applied to their articles. So we can see that, although we publish articles in various disciplinary fields and methodologies, we would like to achieve a better balance. For example, policy is a little overrepresented. Quantitative articles are overrepresented. We would like to definitely encourage a little more qualitative studies and mixed method, and also other different types of methodologies used in our published AERJ article. Okay, so this one, this figure shows the trends from 2013 to 2023. We grouped the articles into one of the 3 types. The studies that have comparative international education focus, the studies with DEI focus, diversity, equity, inclusions in the US context, and the remaining studies, which are the US studies that doesn't have any DI focus. So as you can see that over the years, the number of articles or the proportion of the AERJ article that have DEI focus in the US context has increased quite a bit. However, if you look at the proportion of the article with comparative international education focus, it remains very low, ranging from 3% to 13% at most. So I guess that's one of the reasons why we are having this webinar, to encourage more authors submit their high quality manuscript to AERJ so that we can publish more articles. All right, so I'd like to now turn it to our managing editor, Xiaonan.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Xiaonan Jiang, the managing editor for AERJ, and I'm from Florida State University. Today, I'd like to talk about AERJ's manuscript requirements. Before submitting your manuscript, next page, please. Before submitting your manuscript, it is important for every author to review the submission guideline listed in our official website. I put the URL link here and show the picture of the guideline page. After closely reviewing the guidelines, you need to click on the button to submit your manuscript, and it will direct you to the Scholar One system. In the system, if you have never submitted a manuscript to our journal before, you can create a new account for AERJ. Note that when you create your account, if you have a doctoral degree, please indicate a doctoral title in the drop-down menu instead of using some common titles such as Miss, Mrs., or Mr. Next. Next, I will highlight some important points of the submission guidelines that every author should follow to meet the submission requirements. First, AERJ does not accept manuscripts that are previously published, currently in press, or under consideration for publication elsewhere. Second, when you submit your manuscript, please make sure to include a separate title page with all authors' information, including author's name, affiliation, street address, email address, and phone numbers. Third, the length of your manuscript should not exceed 50 double-spaced pages, including all references, notes, tables, and figures. Authors need to put all tables and figures after the reference list instead of putting them in the main body of the manuscript. If any figures and tables exceed the 50-page limit, you need to submit them separately as supplementary materials. Fourth, please follow the newest APA style for the entire manuscript. For example, authors need to use 1-inch margins on all sides of a page, double space between the lines, and a 12-point font type. Please make sure that when you cite other people's work in your manuscript, you need to add the full citations in the reference list, and all tables and figures should be editable and listed after the reference list. The last critical point is anonymizing your manuscript, which I will explain in detail in the next slide. So, to properly anonymize your manuscript, you first need to remove all extra information about author's identity, your affiliations, acknowledgement, and funding resources in your manuscript. Your identity and affiliation need to be included in the title page, which is a separate document submitted to the system as I mentioned before. There are generally two ways to anonymize your own work. First, all in-text citations should be expressed as a third-person voice. The other way that you can use author to replace your own name, but here is a tricky example that even using author can reveal your own identity. If you develop a concept or term which is famous in the field, you need to use a third-person voice to describe the term. In addition, in the reference list, you shouldn't display your co-author's name either. And if you submit a revised manuscript, your response letter to editors and reviewers should also be anonymized. Next. So the last thing I want to briefly talk about is plagiarism. The definition of plagiarism is using someone else's ideas or words without giving them proper credit. It could be intentional or unintentional. So generally, you cannot directly copy and paste a large section of text from other people's work without citing it. You cannot claim ideas as your own when they are not. You cannot copy and paste your own past work, which is self-plagiarism. So the suggestion that you need to express others' idea in your own words and always give credit for others' ideas by using citations. For more information on plagiarism and APA style, please visit Purdue Online Writing Lab, and I attach the link here. So let's welcome the next speaker for the presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Lushai. I am a professor of education at Claremont Graduate University, and I am a co-editor of AERJ. And I'd like to talk to you about the scope of AERJ and how to avoid a desk reject decision. As you saw in Motoko's presentation, that's about 71% of all manuscripts that we receive. On the right-hand side of the slide, you see two possible scenarios for your manuscript. The first is a researcher trying to understand why they received a desk reject on their manuscript. The second is a researcher celebrating the acceptance of their manuscript. We want to do our best to support you in reaching that second outcome Because I personally have experienced both of those scenarios with AERJ, and the second one is much nicer and much more fun. So we want to try to get you to that second scenario. So the first and most important thing to do is to understand what the scope and aims of AERJ are. And so it's actually pretty simple and straightforward. You can find this on the AERJ website. I'm actually going to read the whole thing, but I want to emphasize a couple pieces of this. AERJ is the flagship journal of the American Educational Research Association, featuring articles that advance the empirical, theoretical, and methodological understanding of education and learning. It publishes original peer-reviewed analyses that span the field of education research across all subfields and disciplines in all levels of analysis. It also encourages submissions across all levels of education throughout the lifespan and all forms of learning. AERJ welcomes submissions of the highest quality, reflecting a wide range of perspectives, topics, contexts, and methods, including interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary work. So the two pieces that I've highlighted here are advancing empirical, theoretical, and methodological understanding. In other words, making a contribution to our knowledge in the field. And second, submitting an article of the highest quality. And those are really the two criteria that you should hold closest as you're preparing your submission for AERJ. To break that down a little bit more in terms of our aims and scope, we're looking for articles that deal with broad interest and pressing issues in education. What do we publish? We publish empirical research, reviews of literature, conceptual papers, comments to specific articles, and replies to those comments. What don't we publish? We don't publish essays, reviews, course evaluations, or brief reports of studies to address a narrow question. We got a lot of questions prior to the webinar related to certain topics, certain fields, certain methodologies. And in fact, we don't prioritize any specific topics, fields, contexts, demographic groups, or methodologies. We receive questions about, do we accept case studies, ethnographies, autoethnographies? Do we accept meta-analyses, quantitative research? I would say yes to all of those, as well as many topics that we receive questions about, including higher education, peace education, vocational and technical education. I would say we would consider all of those topics and methodologies, but again, considering the advancing the field, making a contribution, and submitting a manuscript of the highest quality. But if you really are interested in what we are prioritizing or considering as an editorial team, it's really what Motoko described earlier in her presentation. There are three specific areas of focus that we hope to expand submissions. Those are diversity, equity, and inclusion, raising the voices of marginalized voices in communities, and manuscripts that deal with comparative and international education issues. So I want to, if you would like to understand more about our vision as an editorial team, I recommend reading our editor's introduction from the February 2025 issue of AERJ, in which we kind of envision what we would like to see happening with the journal over the next 3 years of our editorship, broadening the scope of research toward a global context of pressing issues such as migration, social disparities, climate change, and human rights and democracy will further expand the global readership of AERJ and promote intercultural dialogues through partnerships with the editors of premier educational journals in other countries. So we really are hoping to generate a conversation with others across the globe in educational research. So what do we mean by high quality, original, and impactful manuscript? We want to share a few tips to ensure that your manuscript is of the highest quality. So Motoko reviews all of those initial manuscripts that come in, and she decides whether they're out of scope or whether they should go to review or to go to the co-editors. Um, and one thing that's really helpful for her is the title and abstract. So be sure that your title and abstract of your article communicate the study purpose, significance, and context. If you're submitting an empirical study, that should include an introduction, a literature review, a conceptual or theoretical framework, a method section, a results section, and a discussion. You should articulate clear and compelling research questions that are aligned closely with the literature review, the conceptual framework, and the methodology. So alignment is really critical across all of those pieces of your manuscript. And you should situate your study in a global literature. What does the field know about the research problem? And what is the contribution you're making? And Dario will be speaking next about and providing some examples of what that means and in terms of situating your study in a global literature. Also, be sure to describe the study context sufficiently to illuminate the need for and the implications of the research. If you're writing about a context that may not be familiar with the AERJ readership, we ask you to provide enough context so that we understand why those specific research questions are important in that context and what is the contribution that you're making in terms of advancing understanding about education in that context. Also make your contribution clear. What is novel in your research? How have you examined a critical educational problem in a new way? Or how have you identified, explicated, explored a new educational problem that hasn't received enough attention in the past? And describe the implications of your research for policy practice and or theory. And these implications should be closely aligned with your findings. If, for example, you make recommendations for policy, those recommendations should be solidly based in your findings and not kind of generic recommendations that could be applied to any educational problem. It's very important to write clearly, so please carefully read and follow the submission guidelines that Xiaonan shared. Be sure to proofread your text to eliminate errors of grammar and syntax and ensure clarity and flow. So Sage publishers, which publish AERJ, do provide recommendations for editors if you're interested in editorial services. Be sure to avoid excessive use of jargon and field-specific terms and explain any abbreviations and acronyms because those often don't translate well across contexts. Even if the manuscript is in English, we may not understand your abbreviations and acronyms. And finally, as Xiaonan described, we have a 50-page limit. If you have additional supporting information, tables, figures, you can use additional materials, appendices that will ultimately be published online. But you can use those appendices also to avoid overloading the text with excessive detail. And be sure to follow SAGE guidelines for the use of artificial intelligence. AERA is working on its own official policy in terms of artificial intelligence, but for now is following the SAGE guidelines, and you can find them at this URL. And finally, in our editor's introduction, we identified a number of articles that used comparative and international education focus. And here are some examples if you're interested in reading some manuscripts that the past editorial team found to be of high quality and making a contribution to be published. And these that are listed in the here on the slide are also articles that that have a DEI orientation as well as having a C comparative and international education focus. In Dario, in the next presentation, will be describing a couple of these articles and explaining how they are situating their research in a global context. So thank you, and I will pass the next slide to Dario.
So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. I'm Dario Maldonado. I'm a professor, a teacher at the University of Los Andes in Bogota, in Colombia, and I'm associate editor of AERG. So I'm going to speak about this issue of situating your global research your research in a global context, and I want to answer three questions. So we want to speak about three things with all you. So the first is why is it important to situate your research in a global context? The second one is what do we mean by situating your research in a global context? And the third is how to do it, or some examples of how this could be done. So I want to start bringing back the highlighted sentences that Tom used when he showed the aims and scope of the AERG, and the two sentences he brought to you. So the first is about our aims and scope of AERJ, that highlights the interest on advancing the empirical, theoretical, and methodological understanding of educational and learning. And the second has to do with high quality of research, a wide range of perspectives, topics, contexts, and methods, and the inclusion of interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary work. So I'm bringing this because, next time, please, this has all to do, because situating your research in a global context has all to do with the aims and scope of AERJ. So first, what is the role of content? So even if the role of content does not appear explicitly in the aims and scope of AERJ, attending to context in educational research is a requirement to satisfy that declaration, because all the questions we answer in education, almost all the questions are answered in a specific context. The second issue has to do with education systems and education terminology. Since most of our questions happen in particular contexts, we have to take care of communicating efficiently and effectively with people that work in other geographical contexts. Following Tom, please. So more about this. So what we mean by the rule of context. So basically what I have here is some examples of how education questions are answered in context. So things like the issues of culture, social structure, and the challenges of being a teacher. So these ideas of the challenges of being a teacher take place in particular contexts in which it have to do with culture, social structure, or social structure. Or for example, education policies with and without national curricula. So again, when you think about education policies, we have to think on all the law and the social views about national curriculum, or whether national curricula do exist or not. And this changes everything when you think about the design of education policies, or when you value or evaluate education policies. So I have here other examples in which the role of context is evident. And we also have to think about what do we mean by context. So when we think about context, we think about the cultural, socioeconomic, political, historical, technological, local, or community. So this doesn't mean that any research has to take care of all these 7 dimensions, but this means that when any meaningful research that is going to be considered by AERJ has to situate the research in one of these dimensions to show why the research is meaningful, and why context is important to answer the question that the research is answering. Following, Tom? When we think about education systems and education terminology, so again, our questions are answered in particular education systems, and particular education systems that take place in countries where specific education terminology is used. So we have lots of examples of this. So for example, in the UK, in India or Latin America, we speak about primary education for the first 5 years of education, so sort of the things that happen between 6 and 11 years. And in the States, you speak about elementary education. So terminology is crucial, and making clear terminology is crucial, so that to make sure that everybody will understand the research. Other examples have to do with middle education. In the US, this corresponds to grades 6 to 8. In other countries like Colombia, my country, this corresponds to the last years of secondary education. So we have to take care of explaining the terminology and explaining the system in a way that everybody will understand. We have a resource for that, which is the International Standard Classification of Education developed by UNESCO, that helps making this translation. But this translation is not enough. We have to take care that we're really explaining the systems and the education terminology. And then, then the question of how this has been done. So I am using some examples, and they are some of them appear in the slide that Tom used to show some research on comparative education, international education that has been published in AERJ, to show that there are ways in which scholars situate the research in a global context. So the first is to historicize. So it's really explain the historical origins and the historical context, again, this word, the context, in which the issues we are speaking about and we're working on appear in the literature. So this is an article that is called The Mismatch Between the World Bank Actions and the Centralization of Educational System in Less and Middle Income Countries, a 2024 article. And they are taking, they work about 30 countries in this classification. They use data from 1990 to 2019, but they are using the context in which the World Bank was born after the Second World War to explain how the international organizations understand decentralization of education. A second one, Tom, please, is how to explain the system. So this is an example of a paper in an article published in 2020 called Difference at the Extremes, Gender, National Context, and Math Performance in Latin America, that uses data from 15 countries in Latin America, that attends to national education system characteristics and the relation with gender disparities. And they have to take care of how to explain their system around 3 dimensions, which are standardization of school autonomy, stratification, and privatization. And they have to take care of these looking at the characteristics of the national education systems about which they are working. A third one, Tom, is how you can describe the social context, which also can be crucial for giving the aim of situating your research in a global context. This is a paper, an article that uses data from Ecuador. It's about linguistic registers and citizens education. So the first part of the title. Then it explains, even in the title, lots of things that we need to situate the research in the global context. It has to do with context instruction, which are really concepts which are really important in education. But then they tell us that they are talking about Quechua, which is a language spoken in the Andes in Ecuador. They also take care of making us understand the meaning of interculturalidad in Latin America. So this is about really interculturality, but they are using interculturalidad because this is very specifically understood in the context of Latin America. So they are not only speaking about Ecuador, but they are already speaking about what happens in all Latin America. They also speak about the context of mestizaje, which is the way in we understand in Latin America our ethnic origins, and it means it speaks about all the mix of people. All the mix of people according to skin color or geographical origin. It has to compare Quechua and Spanish because everybody knows that in Latin America, the main language is Spanish, but not everybody knows that Quechua is such important language in Latin America. And it has to talk about the history of recognition of Quechua. So again, historicizing. Okay, and the final is about the use of. Can you please go on? Okay, the use of the use of the discussion and the conclusion to situate the research in a global country. So this is a paper about China, uses data about China and about migration in China, but they are not only explaining the relevance of the research in China, but also in East Asian countries. And they show us how these may be relevant for other countries like South Korea, Taiwan, or Japan, which may have similar issues as those that appear in China. So with this, I can hand it up again to Ingrid. giving the main conclusion, which is, or the main message, which is the importance of situating the research in a global context as a means to make sure that to explain the relevance of the research and to satisfy the aims and scope of AERJ in terms of advancing in the understanding of education and learning. So Ingrid, please, it's
Yeah,
your.
thank you very much. Hello, also from my side. I'm Ingrid Gogolin. I'm working at the University of Hamburg in the area of international comparative and intercultural education research. And this adventure to be a member of the AERJ editorial team. This is really new to me, and it's a great honor for me to take part in this wonderful team. And under the excellent leadership of Motoko and Tom and colleagues. And I take this chance to also, for this occasion, I'd like to thank Bidyut for making this possible technically. And I admire our ASL interpreters. You're doing a tremendous job. Well, my own experience as an editor as well as a reviewer is primarily linked to European, Asian, and African journals as yet. So the AERJ is a new adventure for me too. And my main focus now for this brief presentation is to encourage you. Don't be afraid. It is a journey of demystifying the publication process. Next slide, please. I would like to illustrate this by an example, the example of my own German journal, or it's a bilingual journal in English and German. If you see the way how AERJ presents itself, you have seen this bit of text already 2 times now. And you have a look at the way the European or the German Education Research Zeitschrift für Erziehungswissenschaft presents itself. It is roughly the same. We all strive for highest quality in education research. We publish empirical and theoretical conceptual contributions. The contributions are blind reviewed. We strive for high plurality in scientific orientations, in subdisciplines, and in international developments, etc. So next, please. What you can take from this is high quality education research journals around the world share aspirations and intentions. And that means if you have published in a high quality journal in your area already, why not make the next step and try and do it in AERJ as well? Next, please. And there is another message from this. The aspect that high quality education research journals around the world share the same procedures to assure quality of the contributions. They share the blind review processes that guarantee a transparent and fair treatment of every manuscript, no matter where the authors come from. And the more transparent these the indicators are, the better for both sides. So next, please. I can show you an example of a research project which we carried out in Europe several years ago. What we did, we asked highly experienced researchers to explain their agreement on education research publications qualities. We did this in a project with several thousand respondents in 18 European countries, and we asked them to highlight their most important indicators of quality, and then we reduced these the number of indicators until we came to terms among all these people about the 5 indicators you see here. It is rigor, originality, significance for other researchers, for policymakers, or for practice, depending on the type of journal. It is integrity, meaning including considerations of authenticity, of honesty and ethical requirement in the conduct of research, and the style, including clarity, people must understand it, eloquence, and what we consider to be necessary also is some elegance of the style. So several thousand education researchers in 18 European countries agreed on these 5 indicators for quality. And since then, these are used by a number of journals in Europe and other institutions that prove for quality in education research. And I'm happy to say also AERJ agrees to this, just some terms would be different. But I think, next slide, please. My message would be a high level of agreement on quality criteria is important for a transparent and fair assessment of submitted manuscripts. And in AERJ, as far as I learned it until today, this is the case. We have a high level of agreement on quality criteria. So our processes are most transparent and fair. Next one, please. I would like to encourage you also with one figure which has been shown by Motoko to you already. So there is a high rejection rate, which you have probably noticed. But the other message is you get a wonderful review, or you get 3 reviews. And those articles that were resubmitted have a fairly high rate of acceptance. So that means the highest quality education research journals, they are interested in providing their readers with the best and most relevant research results, no matter where they come from. And for this reason, they select most qualified reviewers. Good reviewers, that is my message, are worth their weight in gold. You must not follow all suggestions of the reviewers, and not all of them are always acceptable. But dealing with the reviewers' recommendations usually leads to a much better article, much better quality of an article. So my advice would be look forward to the reviews and use them like a good cookbook. The result will be a more delicious article. Next one, please. And there's another message, take-home message for my part today, and that is, I would like to make a suggestion to you all. Try to establish your own personal, wise and responsible publication strategy, and include in this publication strategy both parts of a strategy. The one is present your high-quality research to your regional audiences, and do this in your regional languages. There is a lot of high-quality education research journals around the world which you can address. But at the same time, also address the international education research community. And if you want to do this, make your choice and address AERJ. Next one, please. So publishing education research has the aim to support the improvement of education research quality around the globe. And I recommend you to make use of the advantages of the publication process that AERJ offers to you, and let your fellow researchers know of relevant education research wherever it takes place. And thank you for listening to our presentation.
Okay, well, thank you so much, panelists. So now we are starting the Q&A. And so what we have been doing is reviewing the questions, the wonderful questions that you have been posting on the Q&A box. And so we are going to answer some of the major questions. We won't have time to answer every one of them, but what we're going to do is to create a Q&A document after the webinar and make it available to everyone. So hopefully that document will answer all of your questions. And then also there will be a post-webinar survey that will be sent to all of those scholars who register. So you can also ask additional questions in that survey, and we will review all of them and create a Q&A document, which will hopefully answer all of your questions. Okay, so I'd like to start with a few questions that is relevant to my presentation. So first, I'd like to clarify that, when I explain the review timeline is 4 months, that is the timeline between the submission to the first decision. So that's the timeline for those after if your manuscripts are given decisions to send it out to reviewers, then you will receive the 3 quality reviews and the decision within 4 months. If the editor decided to desk reject, you will hear from us a lot quicker, definitely within a few weeks. So in that way, when you receive a desk reject decisions, you can turn around and quickly submit your manuscript to another, well-qualified journal. So, okay. So there are a couple of important questions that I'd like to answer. So first, related to this acceptance rates. So we receive over 900 manuscripts each year, but we accept only 4 to 5%. So the question I got was, is there a limit to the number of manuscripts you can publish per year? As 4% or 5% acceptance manuscript rate is statistically insignificant and discouraging to the potential author. So we publish our article 6 times a year, and each issue has an average of 6 manuscripts. So that means that we are publishing about 36 articles per year. So considering that we receive 900 manuscripts and more than that, and with 36 manuscripts per year, the acceptance rates become unavoidably low. I hope that this doesn't encourage the potential author, because many of them will receive 3 detailed feedback from the expert in the field, which will help them improve their manuscript for submissions to another journal, even if you receive a reject decision. So I would like to continue to encourage you to submit your manuscript to AERJ, and hopefully a webinar like this will be helpful. We also plan to do other outreach activities, such as a conference presentation, and also we ask you your idea about how we can better outreach to international scholars who are interested in publishing in AERJ and increase their chance to get accepted. So, okay, so the next question is another very important one. So you asked, the current administration is opposed to all things DEI. How will this influence your desire to increase the number of DEI manuscripts? I would say that will increase our desire even more, because it's so important that we continue to publish this excellent DEI research. We lived in a diverse world, and without conducting research focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, our educators, policymakers, and educational leaders won't be informed. So we will continue to encourage submissions on the manuscript, on DEI, as well as comparative international education. And many of the examples of the article that were shared by Dario and Tom are focused on the global context in comparative international education and DEI at the same time. So these are the kind of manuscript that we encourage. The submission from the authors. Of course, the definition of DEI varies from country to country. So within your own local context, what does diversity, equity, inclusion mean, or social justice mean? And we would encourage you to submit manuscripts that focus on the voices and experience of marginalized communities and students and educators. And so okay, let's see. So yeah, I guess that things we need to be aware of is that within the US context and possibly other national context with similar political situations, that the authors are feeling discouraged to publish their DI work. And so we are aware of your concern. And we would like to we as AERJ editors value your work and encourage you to continue to do your excellent research around DI and comparative international education. Okay, so so the next set of questions are for Tom, who shared AERJ scope. So I'm going to kind of summarize those, sets of questions. Has there been any art education article published in the past decade? I would like to know if there are any opportunity in music education. So the question is, do we publish art education article, music education article?
I would think so. I haven't tracked all of the articles for the past 10 years. We've just been on, we've been the editorial team since June, basically, and I would certainly think that we would welcome art and music education articles as long as they meet those two major criteria of our aims and scope, which are to advance our understanding and to be of the highest quality in terms of the research and the research questions, the alignment across questions, methods, and so forth. So although it would be easy to find if we've published art and music education articles by going on the website and doing a quick search, but I would certainly think that we would welcome those topics.
Okay, so the next set of question is that so developing context and their political economy effect, that kind of topic will be welcome. Is it correct? And also the next one is that would you accept manuscript that engage student-athlete experiences, identify development, educational outcome in various global contexts?
Yes, I would think so. To both of those questions, as long as the research is research-based, as long as the manuscript is research-based with clear objectives or questions, a systematic inquiry to answer the questions and significant implications, we would consider it.
Okay, so there's one question. I'm working on an article focusing on school climate, school effectiveness. Does your journal entertain it?
Yes, certainly. That's a topic of growing importance, and we would certainly entertain it and consider it seriously.
Will AERJ accept doctoral manuscripts?
We would accept a manuscript that's based on a dissertation. We wouldn't accept an entire dissertation. I'm not sure if that's the question. It would have to be under 50 pages or less. So not many dissertations are less than that. But if once you're finished with your dissertation, certainly revise it to fit the aims and scope and the length guidelines of AERJ, and we would consider it.
Okay, so there's the specific question that I didn't understand the slide that talked about the types of publication you consider. As one bullet indicated you accept review of literature, and then the next bullet indicated that you do not accept review of literature. Could you shed light if you accept systematic review, scoping review, and so on?
Yes, I apologize for that lack of clarity. So we do accept literature reviews. When I said that we don't publish reviews, I meant book reviews, and that sort of review. We would certainly consider a literature review, or there was a question prior to the webinar about meta-analyses, and I went back to see the last meta-analysis that I could find that we published was in 2002. But we would certainly consider either a lit review or a meta-analysis article.
Okay, and the last question for you is that what is the maximum number of authors that can be allowed in a paper to be published in the AERJ?
I'm not aware of any maximum number of authors, and in fact, we encourage collaboration, particularly international collaboration. So I don't think we have a maximum, at least that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Although you do not want to have at least 100 authors. So I think as long as you include only the author
Right.
who made substantial contributions, so it could be, if you are in a large project and require so many scholars' contribution, you could have up to even 10. But
Yeah.
I would say the average will be maybe 2 to 3. No, the typical article will not have more than maybe 6 authors.
That's right. And I also want to say that the Publication Manual of the American Psychological Association, APA, has good guidelines on how to consider who deserves authorship, what it means to contribute to a manuscript, and how to think about recognizing authors and author order and all of that. So there are some really good guidelines there if you're trying to decide who to list as an author on your manuscript.
Okay. So I have a couple of new questions that from the Q&A box. So can you briefly expand on the idea of new research methodology in education? Can you give some example? Yeah, so these are kind of things that we also talk about in our editorial manuscripts. Critical quantitative methodology that centered the perspective, the voices of marginalized individuals and communities. So that's one of them. So there are just so many different kind of new research methodologies that we may not be aware of, or those methodology that existed for many years yet have haven't been published enough in AERJ. So that may include decolonizing methodology. It may be action research, participatory action research, and those, legal analysis, historical analysis, philosophy of educations. All of these methods have been under represented. So any other new method also that you think really benefit in generating the impactful implication, we welcome. One thing important to keep in mind is that if you use new methodologies that you think that most scholars and reviewers don't know, it's very important to explain the methodology itself. Where does it originate, and what are the tenets of the methodology, and then what is the benefit of using this particular methodology in your research. Okay, let's see. Let me quickly. Okay, so I see this question. Do you offer mentorship for novice author to create, collaborate on writing an article? That's something that we have definitely discussed. And this is, we are discussing what will be the best way to go about it. So yes, definitely, if you see that such opportunities to be important, please, share your idea, in the post-webinar survey. And, so I think that definitely, I mean, we are communicating with scholars, globally, right? Scholars from 105 countries has participated. So, you have all the different idea. What kind of mentorship will be helpful for you, given your research topic, given your country's context, and so on. So yeah, please do share so that we can offer those, opportunities for the scholars to learn about how to publish in AERJ. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so there's this question. I was wondering if the article on the social and academic inclusion of disabled students in South Africa, is that acceptable? Yes, absolutely. That's the kind of topic that we welcome. Okay. So let me quickly review. We receive a lot of questions now, so. Okay. Okay, so is it possible to talk to the editor if one needs to clarify of some sort? Yes, you can, email us, any of us, and we will do our best to respond. We get lots of emails, so we may not be able to respond to you in 24 hours, but we will respond. So please feel free to email us. And then also you can all email the AERJ web email which Xiaonan reviews, almost every day and respond. So, okay. Okay, so it's good that we have about 20 more minutes. I will do my best to go through these questions. Okay. Okay, here there's a question. I should contextualize my research. If this is so, contextualizing locally, for example, Bangladesh, regionally, South Asia, socially, and historically, is this the key? So that's a question for Dario.
So the main message, thank you, Otako, thank you for the question. The main message is that there are many ways to contextualize, but that the way you contextualize has to be done in a way that you make clear which is the new knowledge, the advancing in the knowledge about education and learning that particular context allows. So that means letting the particularities of the local context in all those senses that you mentioned speak with the literature about education and the most recent literature about education. So I hope I'm answering, but yeah. Any other questions? I can continue explaining more the issue. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Always it. Yeah.
So another question is, I should address at least one of the pressing issue, for example, climate change, that the AERJ highlight in this vision. No, you don't need to. I mean, you have your own expertise and you know the topic of interest. You develop your manuscript, do research, and then submit on the topic that you have expertise, and then so we welcome any topic. So those area that we listed in our vision, those are the area that we would like to prioritize. So when we we would like to receive more manuscript. But that doesn't mean that we will not consider any other topic. Of course, we consider every topic because there are so many important topics around the globe that we may not be even aware of, and we will love to learn more about. All right, so I'm working on a conceptual article that engages across several theories across discipline in order to offer a framework for future research. What are you looking for particularly that increases the rigor of that paper? For example, is structure more important to make the argument legible? Well, it depends on, when we think about the standards for rigor, it also depends on the topic itself. What is the focus? So this is a conceptual article. So we want to see that whether the main argument you are making as the author is something that really contribute to our understanding of the particular topic. Does it is it presenting a new perspective that makes us think deeper and have a better understanding of the topic? Okay, so it's not really about the structure. Structure is a lot less important than the content itself. And, depending on the topic and your approach, the structure may not of the typical, conceptual paper may not apply to you, which is completely fine. I think you have to think about how to structure your article in a way that makes sense, in a way that is allow you to most effectively present your main argument. Okay.
Motoko, there is one question which we can't answer very quickly. Do you have a French section? No, we don't.
I'm sorry?
One question is, do you have a French section?
French
No.
section?
Yeah, French.
Oh, unfortunately, no. Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
No.
none of us are that fluent in French, and I wish we are, but yes, we are. Unfortunately, the mode of, the language of the article we can accept is only English because none of us are that proficient in, French. So sorry, but we don't. Okay. All right, so one comment is that please be sure to respect every question, answer every question, and organize a Q&A to each registrar's email. Yes, we will make sure because we know that time is limited. We receive so many questions, so we will do our best. And also you have opportunity to ask more questions in the post webinar survey. So, and we will do our best to answer those questions to make sure that, all of your questions are answered. And of course, like you can always reach out to one of us directly, and then we will do our best to answer your question. If the Q&A document didn't cover the questions that you would like to get the answer to. Okay.
Motoko, probably there is a question about CIA. I read it. I always thought it was comparing more than one context, but from Dario's presentation, it's not the case. Sorry, I'm unsure what CIE means. Could you probably answer to that question? Because maybe the abbreviation is also not that clear to everybody in the audience.
Yeah, Tom, would you like to take that question as an expert of CIE research?
Sure. So CIE is comparative and international education. And in Motoko's description of well, it would be helpful to look at our editor's introduction, our editorial, because you can see kind of a breakdown of the comparative and international education articles. Some of them are single country articles that focus on one context. Others are comparative. So you don't necessarily have to be comparing one context to the other. But the ones that do tend to be the ones that AERJ has published in the past tend to be more using kind of international large-scale assessment data like PISA and TIMSS. And in those contexts, those data are really kind of designed in order to make international comparisons. So those provide good opportunities to do comparative studies.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going through it, but if any of you notice any question, let me know. Okay, so all right. Your journal needs more than 18 months to publish, but as a PhD student, it is difficult to publish in your journal. What do you think of this? Yes, it's an excellent question, and that's why I tell all my PhD students that the journal publication is a 2-year process. So it is good idea to first decide which topic you're interested in your first year, and then you will probably need another year to do a comprehensive literature review because there are so many articles you need to review and you need to understand before you'll be able to design a study that will be significant and add new information to what we already know. So yes, it is difficult to publish as a PhD student, but if you start early and then if you work with your advisor, then you will be able to, hopefully publish within 5 years, by the time you graduate. Okay.
But I see here, I'm reading two questions that we may want to answer. The first one is a question about whether we would publish a paper or a manuscript that uses qualitative data collected 7 years ago. And the second one is related to a question whether we would publish quasi-experimental design method or manuscripts used with where quasi-experimental design methodologies are used. So I would answer to the two questions, yes. Okay, so again, the issue is about showing that the data that you're using, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, and whether it's quantitative, quasi-experimental, or descriptive, is giving is allowing us to advance in the understanding of learning and teaching.
Yep. And so there is a question for you, Dario. To be considered comparing international work, do you always have to compare two populations, like the Quechua and Spanish example, or can having one group, for example, teacher and children from a developing country in Latin America, enough?
Yeah, so I was also reading that question, and that I think that it also helps answering the same question that Tom was answering before. So you don't need to compare the two populations. So what you really need is to discuss, and show the relevance of studying that particular population in a more broad context. So it's not only, it maybe studying only one group, teachers or children in a developing country in Latin America, will be enough. But we have to make the effort to show how this expands our knowledge about teaching and learning.
And I probably answer to another question with respect to the term conceptual historical research. So the question is, does the journal accept conceptual analysis related to language and linguistics without it being necessarily historical? My answer would be there is nothing which is not historical. What it means to mention the historical situation, it can be the history of today, but you have to explain, for example, what time does the data relate to? Is it the data which was collected a year ago, or is it data from 20 years ago, etc.? That means give not only the regional context of what you did, but also the time as a contextual framework in which your data collection or whatever you do took place. It is not intended that you have to go into history like the Middle Ages or the 19th century. Historicize means just show us which time you're talking about explicitly.
Okay, so there's this question, is there any preference given for the conference paper that has been presented at AERA? Answer is no. It doesn't matter whether you presented the paper, the draft version of it at AERA or not. We read every manuscript in the same way, so.
There is another question that is worth answering. So there's someone that is working on Montessori method approaches, and he or she is asking whether there is a way to publish a video about what Montessori teachers as part of the material. I don't know the answer, Motoko, but maybe some of you know the answer. So whether a video can be published as part of a manuscript.
Yeah, so we have a lot of questions about particular approach or methods or topic that can be published or not. Basically we publish anything, the education related highest quality research. We won't be able to tell you, for example, whether that topics will likely to be published or not, because we don't know until we receive your manuscript and read the detail. Each article, each research is very complex. So that's the reason why we don't normally, when the author send me an abstract, we won't be able to respond to you, because only from the title and abstract, I won't be able to tell you the quality of the manuscript. So that's why we always encourage the author to go ahead and submit it, because we will be able to make a decision whether we will desk reject the manuscript or send it out to the review within a few weeks. So yes, definitely. Basically, we are all the question that is about the topic, methodology, philosophies, and theories. We welcome all of those. Okay.
If I may, there is another question with respect to methodological aspects. The question is, you mentioned the sections of a typical research paper, including the theoretical framework. Qualitative research is mostly inductive, so should we still include the theoretical framework when you submit a qualitative manuscript to AERJ? I would say yes, because submitting all information on your research is necessary, and the theoretical framework should give us an information about why you pose the question you pose. What is the question about? And one aspect of which is really crucial for qualitative papers is that the methodology you used has to be understood by the reader. Not only present the way you collected the data, but also on the way you did your analysis, make it as transparent as possible, and then present the results of the analysis. But the presentation of the way you did it is very often omitted in qualitative papers, and that is a problem, because under these circumstances, you can't, a reader maybe cannot understand what you have done, and so we can't, probably the reader can't follow the results you present. So I think there is no difference between quantitative and qualitative research papers concerning presenting the theoretical framework, presenting the methodological framework, and then present the answers to your question.
Thank you, Ingrid. So we have 4 minutes left. So at this point, so what we're going to do is that we have a copy of all of your questions. So we will review them after the webinar and create a Q&A document. Hopefully we'll answer most of your questions. So here now we have a quick the survey. We would like all of you to participate with 2 simple yes or no questions. So yeah, go ahead and start the question. Okay, so if you could go ahead and answer those questions, then we will be able to share the results in 30 seconds or so. Okay, so hopefully that gave you, all of you, enough time. And again, you will have received a post-survey, a post-webinar survey right after the webinar. So I would encourage you to participate. Okay, good. So excellent. 95% say yes, this webinar answered your questions. 96% said yes, they will be interested in attending another webinar with more interaction with AERJ editor. So that's great. Thank you all for your participation. I'd like to thank the panelists, ASA interpreters, and live captioners, and the AERA Communication and Publication Office Director who did a lot of work for us, and all of you. And so I shared all the link that was included in the PowerPoint file, and then we will also create those Q&A document that will include those links as well. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you.